Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today, in episode 169, I'm very happy to introduce you to Stephen Stathis. Stephen hosts a popular podcast and channel called BGcast, the podcast that covers the Great Awakening live and everything it entails. He is also a proud member of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. BGcast is a multifaceted podcast that covers everything going on with the Great Awakening on planet Earth. Steve, the creator of BGcast, had his awakening in 2008 and since then has dedicated his life to his spiritual path, uncovering the truth about the nature of human beings and existence itself, as well as uncovering the occult nature of world governments and global establishments. To find out more about my guest, all of the links are featured below in the description. Do check us out, subscribe to our channels, leave us comments, and like our videos. Today, we're going to learn all about BGcast content and other interesting things. Be sure to share this fascinating discussion with your friends. Hi, Stephen. Welcome to the Quantum Guide Show. So good to finally get to meet you.
Hey, Karen, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this. We've been chatting a little bit over the past couple of months, kind of getting ready for this, and it's cool that this is my first time here on Quantum Guides. I've seen Frank and Chris and a lot of other cool people on here, so I'm glad to make the list.
Oh, absolutely. I've actually wanted to have you on for some time because you're so focused in your content. So I
Thank you.
understand that you're covering the Great Awakening, you're covering everything that's going on. So it's kind of a spiritual awakening slash news show, really. And I'm wondering if you want to just get into a little bit of how you got started and a little bit about your goals with BGcast.
Awesome, Karen. Well, I've wanted to do something like this for a very long time. Like you were saying in the beginning, I woke up very young. I woke up in 2008. It was during the recession of our financial atmosphere and things like that. And it kind of started in a multifaceted way. I had started getting into different spiritualities such as Hermeticism, Gnosticism, Buddhism, Taoism, things like that. My background is my mom's side is Roman Catholic, my dad's side is Greek Orthodox. So I grew up in the middle of the schism, and that was an interesting time for me. And then I started learning about the food. At this time, I started getting kind of really serious about my health and my health and fitness journey, and learning about the food and what they do to the food kind of started opening that door too. And
Mhm.
then the financial market. So I remember I was 20. This was kind of the big hitter. And I'm like, I need to learn how our financial market works. I'm an adult now. Like, I should know this stuff. So going forward, and then after I learned about it and learned how it works, I was completely blown away. That I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, so you're telling me that our money is created out of thin air and then loaned to us at interest? I was like, that. If this was common knowledge, I think a lot of people would be noping the hell out of this really fast. And it kind of, escalated from there. And, I've, the podcast originally started in 2020. That's the first attempt at liftoff at that point. We had that situation going on back then, so I felt like that we had to, it was my time at that point to kind of step forward and to do something. And I look back and I'm glad I got it started per se, but I was still not exactly ready, at least in my eyes, to be delivering the message that I am today. So the podcast ended up taking a seat for a couple years. And then it was October 22nd, 2022. And I had been following Ben Davidson of Suspicious Observers for a few years at this point,
Yeah,
and he
I follow him
was
too.
yeah, he was down in Colorado Springs doing a meet and greet. So I was like, hell yeah, I'd like to go meet Ben. I'd like to actually meet this guy. So I went down there with my wife, It was at a pumpkin patch, and got to meet Ben, talk with him. He was a pretty cool guy at that time. He's gotten a little interesting lately. I still got a lot of respect for him, though. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. And we were talking, and we kind of hit it off a little, and we were talking about how he didn't make it on Rogan's podcast, or he's trying to get on Joe Rogan's podcast. And I jokingly threw out there, I was like, well, I used to have a podcast and I was thinking about revamping it. And he looked at me dead serious and he goes, I'll get on it. And then immediately I was like, uh-oh, universe is kicking me in the ass now to do this. So then it kind of went back to work. I started reformulating it, kind of, changing things up a little bit. And I just started doing it. It was funny because I first started off on my iPhone and iMovie, doing little short videos and stuff like that. And then eventually over time, it led to where I'm at today. And Ben was actually my first big guest on the show. And I'm really grateful to him still for, taking the time out of his day and his busy life and showing up and chatting with me and my co-host for a good hour and a half. That was an awesome thing of him. And, despite he's gotten a little interesting lately, I think this is a true test to his character of who he is, the fact that he will still take time and he's not too important enough or too big to do that.
Yeah.
And after that, I mean, it kind of all took off from there, Karen. I met Chris, as we were kind of like talking about in the beginning. He was dealing with those YouTube censorship issues that I was. And we hopped on each other's shows. He liked what I did. And that's kind of all she wrote, Karen. And now it's been a fantastic journey, honestly. It's been amazing. I've met so many really cool people along the way. I've made a lot of really cool friends. And, I look forward to what BGcast brings in the future. I honestly do.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, Ben, that's his name from the Suspicious Observers guy, right? I'm sorry, I'm bad with names.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ben Davidson. Yeah.
he's gotten a little salty in recent times, but at the same time, he has such a brilliant mind, and people who have really brilliant minds sometimes struggle with patience for the rest of us people that are really struggling to get what he's saying. So I don't blame him, but I still watch his stuff because that's a good way to stay prepared. And
Absolutely.
what's interesting about his message is, like, I also believe that there is a planetary disaster coming. And I'm
Hmm.
wondering if that's why the world leaders are taking such ridiculous strides in the directions they're going with, because to them, I don't think they're in touch with their own mortality, to be honest, and perhaps they think they can all go underground and survive. And I laugh at that and I think, oh man, sucks to be them. Can you imagine being compacted into these underground communities with only each other? Oh my god, that would be like suffering hell on earth. So anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on here,
No, no, no. You're all good.
but basically what I think is, why else would they be doing like the experiments, let's just put it that way, on us? And that includes the psychological experiments and all the crazy things they're doing. Like, seriously, like, I totally get the whole clown world way of looking at it. And I'm wondering if it has something to do with that. So, with me in my own little corner of the world, what am I doing? I'm really paying attention to food. I'm really paying attention to taking good care of the temple body,
Hmm.
and being aware and being prepared. And that's a full-time job in itself. And it makes it
It
so I'm
is.
not worrying so much about what the clowns are doing in the clown world. And I just wondered if you have anything you want to say about all that.
Oh, absolutely. So the one thing I was going to say is yes, I can totally empathize with Ben's frustration. I get frustrated too. I am not as vocal about it as I used to be because I understand that that's going to, some people will hop on with it, but a lot of people get turned off by that. And so that's kind of why, like, I do voice my frustrations from time to time. Don't get me wrong. I think there's, we who have chosen the spiritual way have learned that, we go about things a little bit differently than that. As you were saying about Ben's disaster, you want to know what? The thing I'm going to say the most is, out of all of the Earth disaster theories that I've seen, I think Ben's has not only the most evidence backing it up, I think it lines up with the Mayan long count calendar. It lines up with the half precessions of the equinox. And that speaks to me.
Hmm.
And because that's how, I guess you could say, deeply ingrained I have become in all of this, is that when I see those signifiers and that symbolism of these different numbers on how this event occurs in these ratios at this time, and it is the exact half precession of the equinox, all of that. So I do, this is what I potentially think, Karen. I think, yes, it is a possibility that we could face something like this in our lifetimes, 100%. However, I think it's just many of one possibilities that we could definitely face. I am a big, huge proponent in panpsychism and consciousness creating reality.
Hmm.
I think we've seen this kind of unfold throughout the years, and I myself have gotten real time examples of the fact that my consciousness does create my reality. And I think really where we're at right now is we're in a spiritual testing ground. This has become a spiritual testing
Yep.
ground at this point in
Yep.
time. I joke that in December 21st, 2012, it was not the end of the world, but a downloading of an expansion pack to our
Hmm.
existence. And this expansion pack, be it the Humanity Ascension test run or Humanity's spiritual test run, is what I've decided to label it. And, at least from what I see, really is what started to kick things into high gear for us. Because if you look before 2012, everything was still going on. Don't get me wrong, but it was on a much more subtle level. It wasn't, you had to know what you were looking for. You had to dig even deeper than you kind of have to do right now to find what you're looking for. But then after 2012, we have the cacophony. We have the clown world cacophony. Things started to get very interesting. We had the rise of the division in the country. We had the rise of the woke stuff. All of this stuff started to get thrown into the mix, and that's really where I'm kind of at with it. I think that's what we're undergoing at this point in time. Whoever or whatever's hands this is all in has the entire collective of humanity in mind. They don't
Hmm.
have people just like you and me in mind. So this is why they are going about it the way they are going about it. And I almost joke that we're being trolled a little bit, or like mocked a little bit at this point
Oh,
in
yeah.
time into waking up. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree. And this has been very difficult for me psychologically because back in the 1990s, I'm an old lady, so I've been around forever. And in the 1990s, I actually started an anti-poverty social action justice group. And it was just all volunteer. None of it was paid, of course. But we got to meet in a coalition of other groups that met in Vancouver under the main group, which was called End Legislated Poverty, which I love the
Hmm,
name because poverty is absolutely legislated. A lot of people don't realize that. So,
I
anyway,
agree.
we met as a coalition of all the anti poverty groups, and we were on top of what was happening in Davos and with the I don't think it was the WEF then it was known as the G7 and the G8
Mm-hmm.
and the
G8
G12s,
and G6,
and
yeah.
we knew all of this was coming, and so we all went out into the world and told everybody, and everybody thought we were crazy and nobody would listen. So then to watch it unfold has been just shocking and devastating because we tried to tell people and they wouldn't listen. And even today, Stephen, we're trying to tell people, but the numbers that are listening are very few. But maybe that's the way it is. You know, it's the narrow road, the cramped and narrow road, the path less traveled. But it's not just political and economic, it's very much spiritual.
Mhm.
So, that's why I love your podcast so much, and I want you to
Thank
tell
you.
everybody about it because
Thanks.
it's just such a ripe field for people just to go and get that juicy feeding that they need to be inspired and to know what's going on. And that's the other thing. A lot of alternative media, and especially the bigger channels, are not necessarily um, oh, I don't even know how to say it. I guess I mean it's a slippery slope to talk about objective
Altruistic.
truth, but they're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
they don't they do seem to be mixing up truth with a lot that's not true, and it's confusing, misleading, and so people need to know where can they find stuff that's coming from the heart, from the soul, from the spirit, as well as just knowledge of on what's going on.
Thank you, Miss Karen. I appreciate those kind words. I'm really glad that you like what I do. And that's the reason why I do this. That's the currency for me in this. It's not about making money, it's about sharing and learning together. Because I'm just in the same as much as the same boat as you are. And I'm in the same boat just as everybody else on this. I have my ideas, I have what I think about, and I talk about my ideas and I try to learn with the people that are listening to me because like I said, I don't know more than you. I don't know more than really anybody when it comes to this. I have my perspective, don't get me wrong. But the one thing I want to say is props for going out and doing what you did in the 90s. I really like that. I did a lot of the marches in the early 2010s. I did the Million Mask March. I did the March Against Monsanto, the March Against the War in Libya and things like that. So I've beat the streets before, most certainly. And I think that's a good thing in the beginning. I think, it's good to go out there and to experience that and to understand what it means to use your voice. A little bit into that, I realized that these protests were very staged. I
Oh
realized
yeah.
this at a firsthand basis because the 2014 Million Mask March in DC was a setup. The marches kept getting ran into police barricades, into intelligence agencies, into dead ends, and things like that. And that was kind of my really first peek on how deep this infiltration goes. And I we'll get to that in just a sec, but I feel you, Karen. We've been trying to wake people up for a while now. I mean, it feels like I think one of the biggest reasons is there's it's either one of a few things. The cognitive dissonance is so heavy at this point in
Mhm.
time. It's almost become spell-like, or there is some kind of spell on this reality of some kind, whether we call it the habitus spell, or we can say it's a occult spell of some kind that I think it's hand in hand. I think it's somewhere in the middle because I know a lot of people will say absolute cognitive dissonance, and some people will say, well, no, there's definitely that. And, one thing we see on the spiritual way is that it's never really swaying in either direction wholeheartedly. It's always ending up in the middle somewhere. There's always the two sides of the same coin. And in my show tonight, I'm going to be actually bringing up on how Christ and Lucifer could potentially be two sides of the same coin. And I
Oh
know
yeah.
that's a heavy topic for a lot of people, but I digress. It's tough when because you look at a lot of people in this world, and this is one thing I talked about with the Sound of Freedom movie.
Oh
A lot
yes.
of people were really upset at it. Some of it were happy with it, but I understood what was going on and why they did it the way they did. So I had to kind of
Mhm.
explain it this way. It was a limited hangout, and it was a limited hangout for the sheer fact that you tell 300 million asleep Americans that every facet of Americana they have grown to love, respect, and enjoy is interwoven with sex trafficking, pedophilia, and
Mm-hmm.
pedophilia. I like a good challenge just as much as the next guy, but dealing with a whole country full of insane people after them finding that out, I don't think any sane person would truly welcome that scenario. And that's kind of where like I come into what you were saying about some of these bigger channels. So Karen, I don't know if you've known, you probably have because you've been around for a little bit, but our community has been infiltrated for quite some time. In my shows, I talk about Operation Chaos by the CIA. I talk about Operation COINTELPRO by the FBI. And I think I was talking with Dawn about another one. It was Operation Prosperity, which I believe is definitely an extension of Operation Chaos because it never had an official end date. It was all of these operations. And what these operations do is they infiltrate counterculture and dissident movements. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
they do. They go in, they divert, they dissolve, and they disengage. So, and there's one thing I've come to realize, and now I'm not saying everybody with a big channel could potentially be in on it, but I've seen firsthand that the CIA, the DoD, and the FBI has their hands in literally every piece of mainstream content that we intake. That CIA and Hollywood have a wicked revolving door policy. Amazing. They are like best friends. And the CIA and the Pentagon will actually edit Hollywood scripts after they're written and they will edit them if they don't like what they see or they feel the narrative is being portrayed in a bad light. They will edit them. They are the final say of the script, the CIA and the DoD, before the film goes into production. Okay. And then on top of that, too, they got to the writers like Hemingway and things like that in the early 50s at the turn of the Cold War. They're in we talk about the Tavistock Institute and the CIA being involved in the music industry just so heavily. So that's just something I want everybody to consider before I say what I'm about to say about this. So I'll digress. As I was saying before, not every big channel per se could be in on it or controlled opposition. However, if you notice this about the big channels, they most likely are. So the first thing to look out for is, are they giving you limited hangouts? Are they giving you half truths? That's the first thing to look for. The second thing to look for is, are they sensationalist? That's a big one that a lot of the controlled oppositions or the people who are in on it are. They take the sensationalist route because then they're making it look silly or they're making it look absurd or they're making it look crazy even though they could be giving you a truth and along those lines. So it's easy to discredit that individual on the truth because it's so sensationalist, it's ridiculous. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have the fear mongers, and those are the ones that are constantly trying to put fear into people. If you've noticed, their videos are like, "This is happening tomorrow," or "the next big event," or this, and this. All of these titles that you see on these podcasts or these videos, that's the fear mongers. And I believe they are in on it and they're infiltrated too, because we'll get to fear in a second and its power as a manifester. And then the fourth category is one that's a little bit harder to pick out. You really got to kind of look and listen. But if they're dividing their community, if they're dividing their own community amongst themselves through these really petty, minute differences and petty issues that really in the long run don't really mean anything and that are not important, that would be the fourth category I see when it comes to what we're talking about as far as these bigger shows. And that's why I say, Karen, I'll digress and we'll get to the next topic, is we have to have discernment at all-time high right now. Like we've in the years before, we've talked about discernment, how that makes you a spiritually sovereign person, on how that can just make you a sovereign person in general. And then just, it will raise your frequency by default, having discernment. We have to have our discernment at the max at this point in time, because we are now entering what I would call the next phase of the spiritual testing ground. And in my eyes, it's only going to get more interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with everything you've said. Now, I just want to add my own 2 cents a little bit in here. Um, I've gone down a lot of rabbit holes, done a lot of research, and I'm not claiming to know the truth, but I do see that what started off about 70 years ago with information slash misinformation and projects like, for instance, Majestic 12, um, um, Project Paperclip, MK Ultra, and on and on and on. It's like all of those things were experimenting with humanity, experimenting what we would accept, what we wouldn't accept, what we'd believe, what we wouldn't believe. And it seems like now everything, all the research they did has now been infused into these many, many tentacles of projects they're not just going out into every level of society. They are embedded into what I'm going to call the industrial, military, media, medical, media system. Did I say media already? I'm probably worth saying it twice anyway. And on it
Exactly.
goes. And it's infiltrated every level of society to the point where even like organized crime is so embedded in with politics. It's just all one big mess. And the way I cope with it all is to go, first of all, they're not that smart. And the reason they're not that smart is because they're psychopaths. Psychopaths lack empathy, but they also lack the other spiritual gifts that you get when you are an
True.
empathetic, compassionate human being. They don't have the creativity, they don't have the magic that we, the common people, have. And because we hold all the power, that's why they're all behind the curtain, just like in the Wizard and the Wizard of Oz. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. I am the Almighty Oz. So, what I've done on a personal level is I've just shifted into creating my own reality because I agree with you. We have great creative power. So, within my own reality, I'm creating relationships with family and even difficult that relationships that were difficult in the past and changing them by changing myself into these harmonious, peaceful relationships, creating balance in my life, finding joy in the simplest of things, taking really good care of my body because I know from experience, I won't get into it in this podcast, but I turned myself
Mhm.
over to the medical industry and was sacrificed on the great altar many
Oh
times
yeah.
through surgeries and pharmaceuticals. And I was a good girl. I did what I was told. And all it did was led me to very poor mental health, physical health, spiritual health. Like I had to cut from everything. And I know this is controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's my truth. I also had to split from religion, organized religion, because that again was not feeding me. And I was able to tap into an internal source that feeds me and satisfies me. And as I tap into that, what I create, I then bring forward to share with humanity, which was why I created the Quantum Guide Show, why I
Love
do
that.
Aliens and Angels podcast, why I do everything. And so my life now within embedded, a reality embedded within this dysfunctional mess is the most functional, peaceful, loving, amazing reality where I have health and I have happiness and I sleep like a log
I
and
love
it's
that.
good, but it's been work, but that's what I tend to do because I tried protesting, I tried creating, groups to help and raise awareness. And I'm also to the point now where I'm not trying to awaken anybody anymore.
Hmm.
No, they're on their own, but I'm here to feed those who share in, a similar experience to me. Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I cope with it all.
Absolutely, Karen. That makes a world of sense. You're what I'd call an OG in this. And I mean that in an endearing way. Trust me. I've noticed as we each individually on the subjective level, we go through what we would call the awakening. I don't really like using that term anymore. I use it for the beginning phase. I say at first you awaken, but then you remember is
Yeah.
after that. And then so a lot of people, they start off with the geopolitical climate. That's really kind of where it all begins for a lot of people. They realize politics is corrupt, and they realize the governments and the establishments are corrupt. And what that kind of does is it draws this inner fire, but at the same time, it also draws this anger and this desire to try and change what's going on. And through trial and error, you will find that try as you might, as angry as you might get, and like you were saying, you were trying to start groups and things like that. That's not truly going to elicit the change.
Hmm.
And it's going to expend your energy, just like you were saying to you. I used to, when I first woke up, I was a little zealous SOB. I tried to convert everybody. I tried to get everybody on board, open everyone's eyes as much as I could. I joke because I look back at my old Facebook, and I was back in 2013. I was Stephen Amon Ross Stathis, and I like look back and I laugh my ass off, and I'm like, man, have I come a long way? And it's like, but you're at the phase where I think a lot of us need to be. I'm at that phase too, honestly. The real change starts from within. And that's truly what's going to cultivate these changes you wish to see in your exterior world. I mean, you look at all of the conflicts that are surrounding you. Um, and you look at everything, and this is just a mirror of what's going on within the inner human collective consciousness at this point in time. The biggest favor you can do yourself in your remembering journey, at least in my eyes, is to go inward. Okay. And this is going to be what not only gives you a peace of mind in your life and the ability to manifest and create the world you want. Because when you master yourself and you master your reality, that energy permeates into the collective consciousness. And that's why I joke we got two phases of the awakening remembering. We have the conscious phase and we have the subconscious phase. And the conscious phase is for people like you and I. We're already aware of what's going on. We know, like, and we're taking the steps that we need to take to deliver the message and work on ourselves and get us to where we need to be. And then you have the subconscious aspect. And what I mean by that is people like you and I, Karen, are what I call energetic light posts. We came here and we are grounding the higher frequencies into this reality. It's who we are. I even theorize people like you and I were already born in a state of ascended consciousness that doesn't make us any better. And that's the one thing I always like to lay down when I say that. In fact, it gives us more responsibility. It gives us even more responsibility. And when we
It does.
improve our, yeah, I'm glad you see it that way. And it's like, as we improve ourselves, that energy permeates to the collective. I can't tell you how many people I've seen, they're getting interested in like homesteading. They're getting interested in yoga, meditation, tarot, singing. Like all of these people who I never would in my life thought that they would be interested in that kind of stuff or start to gain an interest in that kind of stuff. Even though they don't see the entire bigger picture just yet, they're starting to pick up the energetic coattails of
Yeah.
what we're doing. And eventually, what I think will happen is as we continue to evolve, as these energetic light posts, the collective will slowly begin to follow suit. And I've seen that this is the true way to elicit the change, is to live by the example and be the example and go inward. Like you were saying, find joy in the simple things in life. All right. I can't tell you how much joy I find in a super long hot shower. You know what I mean? Something super simple, but oh, it relaxes me. It makes me feel, things like that. You want family, you want love. Focus your time on the things that mean most to you in creating your existence that you desire and your own self-mastery. And that's going to be the biggest thing you can do to help change things. What you were saying, I'll digress kind of back to what you were saying about MJ12, MK Ultra, all that. Now, I do agree with you. These people are psychopaths. The one thing I will add in is, sometimes you have this thing called malevolence disguised as incompetence. And this is a huge psychological tactic. Now, the politicians, on the other hand, I don't think exactly that they are the ones that are truly, I think they're the underlings. The ones that I say that are truly doing this, I call them the invisible college.
Yeah.
And what the invisible college would be a collection of the secret societies that exist throughout the world and the intelligence agencies that exist throughout the world. They are the ones who are manufacturing and concocting these events. And these people have a very profoundly deep understanding in the human consciousness and the human psyche. And that's where their advantage lies, is they don't know it. We know it as good as them, but the greater collective has no clue compared to what they understand and what they know. And
Yeah.
I was talking about back earlier, we talked about fear being a manifester. When we're talking polarities, we have love and fear. All right, they're on both ends of that polarity spectrum. And love is a very powerful manifester. When it's used, I think love is a force. I think it's more than just an emotion. It's a power. It's an energy. It's a force of some kind. I've experienced that. And then you have fear, which itself can be a very powerful manifester. And this is what they've come to understand. And I'll lay it out in this really simple analogy. I call it the Truman Show analogy. But instead of being advertised products, we're being advertised narratives and trains of thought. And whichever narrative that we buy into on a subjective level becomes our reality. And if enough of the collective buys into that narrative, then it will come forth into the collective reality.
Yep. Very well said. Very well said. Hi, guys. Break time for a short message. YouTube will not monetize me, so if you enjoy my content and want to support my efforts, help me to cover my expenses by visiting my shop to buy yourself a beautiful orgone generator. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand, and they are ethically sourced, handmade, and double charged for maximum effect. They are only available through my website, www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. Many people are finding comfort with Zendome's orgone generators, commonly called Orgonite. They are a simple compound which balance ambient energy by converting negative energy and EMF into positive healing energy with many easily confirmed health benefits. They are a simple compound with alchemic and energetic properties. These devices function as self-driven, continuously operating, highly efficient, negative to positive energy transmutation factories. They help diminish the harmful effects of electromagnetic frequency radiation by attracting and converting negative energies, retuning them into new and more healthful sound and light wave patterns. And they help to purify the atmosphere and accelerate plant growth. They also help stimulate positive mood and are a natural remedy for poor sleep patterns. When Orgonite is within range of any corded or wireless electronic device, it will efficiently and continuously transform that energy into orgone as it is being transmitted. This essentially creates orgone energy transmitters out of any and all emitters of harmful negative energy. You can use these devices for focusing the mind, healing, meditation, and for spiritual growth. Zendome's Orgonite are my unique brand of orgone generators, and they are only available through my website. Don't be fooled by imitations. Check out my website to see my latest selection at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. Check them out today. Now, let's get back to the show. I agree. I agree with you. I think the politicians, I think some of them may have the best of intentions. I think a lot of them believe their own bullshit, but I think they're all pawns. I really do. And I think those who have all the power, they only have the power because they've tricked humanity. So for instance, they have all the money, but why do they have all the money? Really, money is nothing. They create it like with their magic wands out of nothing. And then they convince us that we need it. And then they loan it to us and then charge us interest on it. If I go and put $1 in the bank, only maybe 10 cents or less, maybe less, stays there. The rest gets loaned out to someone else and then they pay interest. It's a scam. It's a huge magical scam. It never occurred to me before about 5 years ago, a light went on and I went, wait a minute. If they're printing it out of thin air, why do people have to pay taxes? Why don't they just print more? Like, do you know what
That's
I
the
mean? Like,
interest.
yeah, like it's crazy. So I think that, yeah, and they're using magic, and that is where you get into the occult issues behind governments and stuff like that. It is a cult. It is an abuse of magic, but it only works as long as we buy into it. And I just want to add one other quick thing. I saw a documentary, I don't know where I saw it, a short documentary on how to start a movement. Well,
Hmm.
to start a movement, you only need one person to stand up and go, this is bullshit. I'm not doing it anymore. And pretty soon, a couple more people join and they go, this is bullshit. We're not doing it anymore. And and it takes on a life of its own. It literally takes on a life of its own. And if you just give it time, it can change. The whole world can change. And I think, though, the difference between those who hold I'm going to call it perceived power and those
Hmm.
who hold the lack of, the difference is we're not willing to use brutality, whereas the forces that be are out, not just willing to use brutality, they get off on using brutality.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
but I think that we have the power, Stephen. We have the power. And if people want to wake up or not wake up, whatever the term is, that's fine. But at least when the day comes when I draw my last breath, I can say, I lived my life with integrity. I did my best. I shone my light. I can peacefully go into whatever is in the hereafter. And I think that removes the fear of death, which in turn removes many of the other fears. And I can't be controlled. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
I really like how you laid that down, Karen. The one thing I am definitely going to agree with is, yeah, so the occult nature, our reality. So this is one thing I like to say, and I did this in that episode that you asked me for, the symbolic lens. I say that symbolism is the prime language of this reality. It is the highest language there is, and written and spoken language is secondary. Now, the reason why I say that is you can take two people from different countries, different walks of life, don't understand each other. They speak two different languages. You can show them a similar symbol or a common symbol, and they both will understand what that symbol means. And now there's a lot of archetypal symbols that exist that have energetic effects. For instance, we have the collective consciousness archetypal symbols that exist within us, the world of forms, as Plato would call it. And then we have the universe itself uses these archetypal symbols to construct itself or to construct our conscious reality, such as sacred geometry, the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, things like this. So we can see that symbols are used in pretty much every facet of our existence, and some of these symbols have energetic effects. Now, the occult the occult nature of our government. So there's a form of magic. Not a lot of people kind of dive into unless you've been there. A lot of people have dived into practical magic. Some people have dived into chaos magic, but there's a form of magic that exists called higher ceremonial magic. And now this version of magic, it works with the divine, it works with the aspects of the divine, but the one that the elites, or the predator class as I refer to them as, they use an inverted version of this higher ceremonial magic. So one thing you were saying, I don't know if you've had the chance to learn about karmic retribution or revelation of the method. This is actually something I learned from Sarah, the alchemist, after watching some of her shows and having her on. I always knew what it was, but I didn't know it had a technical term, and she kind of like nailed it down for me. So this is how they get away with the brutality and they don't receive karma from it. So when 2020 was going on, I'm going to leave it vague as that. Who were the ones policing us? The government or our own people?
Our own people.
Exactly. That's how they get away with it. And that's how they do not take or absorb the karma from what they do, because they hand the orders over to us, or they hand the responsibilities over to us, and we go, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and not question a single thing about it. That's how they get away with it. And that's why they're so obsessed with the brutality too, as you were saying, because they don't have to reap the karma from it. They're not the ones going out and fighting and blowing up wars. They're getting the individual that said, yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, to go out there and do it for them. So that individual then takes on the karma from this and in their life and in their collective, and they get to walk away scot-free. And then revelation of the method would be the more passive approach to that. It's where you're delivered a half truth that is disguised to and worded to get somebody to do something they want. And because it was a half truth and they chose to believe it out of their free will, at that point in time, then they start to begin to take that karma on from that decision as well. So this is why they're so obsessed with the brutality, is because they don't get to reap any of the karma from it, because they have us going out and doing it for them. So that's something I think that, we have to gain awareness of, in this collective, that there's still programming that could still potentially exist within us that can contribute to this. Even us awakened remembering ones can still sometimes subconsciously do this. So, that this is one of their understandings of the occult nature of reality. They understand if they can have the idea, but if they have somebody manifest and execute the idea for them, then that absolves them of any of the karma that they could have. Now, don't get me wrong, there's still instances where they can receive karma for their actions, and we can't really talk about it, but things involving that particular topic with, you know, the Hollywood and all that. But nonetheless, this is what they do. This is why they like brutality. They understand, they have just a profoundly deep understanding of the human psyche and human consciousness. They understand it better than the collective. And
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where I use this, as I say, the human psyche can either be the strongest thing in the world or the most fragile thing in the world. It depends on its awareness. If the human psyche is aware it's being manipulated, it is tough as nails. It's not going to allow it to happen. But if the human psyche is not aware it's being manipulated and it thinks it's altruistic in what it's doing, it can be easily manipulated.
I agree, and I'd like to know your thoughts about this. It seems to be people are easily hooked into what I'm going to call religious ideology, where they're on the side of truth, they're on the side of right. This is a righteous war. This is are righteous. You don't have any right to infect me. I'm going to, and on it goes. And you're right, the marching orders, they may come down from the top, but everybody just blindly follows. So the bank teller at the bank is going to give you a bad time if you're not wearing a face diaper. And on and on and on, even to the security, they're going to kick you out and brutalize you first because this is a righteous issue, and they got to be on the side of the righteous. And to me, it's just the same pattern I see in religion being passed down throughout the levels. And until people have woke up to and explored their own internal ideologies, and
I love
their
this.
own critical thinking and um, self-analysis, which most people don't because they're so busy being distracted by
Mhm.
so many things from ice cream to TV shows. They don't spend the time doing that to unlock, the truth from within. And for those of us that watch it happening, it's so surreal. It's just so surreal. Oh my God.
I
Makes me
completely
just want to
agree.
hang out with my cats.
I'm with you, Karen, and I agree honestly with everything you just said. And this is why some people might not be fond of what I'm about to say, but just hear me out. Okay. I think so. I'll begin with this. So pre 2020, right? Our community had really no religious orientation. We all had our different philosophical and spiritual beliefs, but we all kind of united under the fact that we were, against the establishment. We were anarchist, voluntarist, even minarchists, and different people who valued freedom, who valued the freedom of spirituality, who valued all this, and we saw what was going wrong. So this was like pre 2012 or 2020. Then 2020 came along, and all of the conservative Christians got lumped in with us. Now, I'm kind of okay with that because the more the merrier at this point. I know it definitely muddied the waters. Don't get me wrong, and I'm going to get to that in a sec. It definitely muddied the waters for people like you and I who are trying to deliver this in the most objective way that we can. And I do think that was part of the plan. And this is what I'm going to say now that I preface this. I do believe modern organized religion is a form of spiritual warfare. And the reason why I say this is because number one, it disconnects you from the divine within. It makes you see God or whichever deity as something external of you. Okay. That's the number one power grab that is going on right now, giving away your power to external deities, icons, idols, whatever it may be. You know what I mean? That's the biggest power grab. So that's the first reason why I believe it's spiritual warfare. The second reason I believe it's spiritual warfare is it separates you from your fellow humans. I was just talking about this today. There's this guy on X. I call him as fundamentalist as they get. Is now saying that empowering yourself and consciously evolving yourself is false light, satanic, and Luciferian. And I
Mm,
kind of had to go with it like this, and that is a spiritual warfare tactic. And the reason being is action, evil is defined by action, not by which spiritual book that you decide to read. Okay. And that's what a lot of these, I mean, I don't care. And I even made the statement. I was like this: you can not believe in the same guideline as I do. I call them guidelines because everybody's got their own preference to which guideline they like. And I say, do you murder people? Do you harm innocents, women, children, animals? Do you lie, cheat, or steal? Do you rape? Do you do this? I'm like, if you don't believe what I believe and you don't do any of that, you're not evil. You're not false light. You're not satanic. You choose a different way in life, and I can't fault you for that. Okay, but now you have these fundamentalists who are coming in that are saying that unless you believe in that Jesus Christ is Lord and that you read this Bible, you are evil and I cannot be with you, so I cannot associate with you. So this is kind of the division tactic that a lot of modern religions
Yeah.
instill, that I for sure say is a spiritual warfare tactic. And then you have the fear that it instills in people. I feel I've had many encounters with the divine. I'm not afraid of the divine at all. Him and I are best buds. Like, you know what I mean? It loves
Hmm.
me. It loves me so unconditionally. Like,
Hmm.
and wants the best for me and wants me to achieve the life that I want. It doesn't want me to be afraid of it. So, like, and so this is where I'm saying that's why I feel modern religion is spiritual warfare. And I completely agree with you. It is an ideology. It is. And I think what happens with a lot of us, and it's a human condition, is we get so hyper fixated on the logistics and the very fine details when it comes to things. It has to be exactly as the scripture says. It cannot deviate from the scripture at all. And that's where I come in and I'm like, well, that's a guideline. That's just something you use as a basis for your own spiritual doctrine that you're building. Because I think that's the true spiritual doctrine, Karen, the one that we make for ourselves. And so that's the thing that kind of grinds my gears about it. The irony I find behind this, though, and I kind of laugh at this just a tad, not out of making fun, but in good faith, because I do think that eventually a lot of the modern Christians that they will understand what true Christ is at some point and they will move from where they are. I have high hopes for them to do that because they have it in them.
Hmm.
It's not that it's not there. It's just very muddied at this point. And but I'll digress. Is what I was saying is the it's funny because a lot of the conservative Christians they've come to the grips with the fact that the government, the all governments, global establishments, scientific institutions, the education system have lied to them by pretty much every avenue. But they read the government approved King James Version Bible. They have to have the government approved Bible, and some people you're not changing that. I've I've never tried to change. I've talked with Christians. I'm like, okay, well, have you read the Geneva text? Have you read an interlinear text? Have you given that a try, or
Hmm.
things like that? And a lot of them are just so shut in. No, this is the word of God. This is the way God wanted it. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, well, God gave us free will. So once we received that free will, it was humans could do whatever they want to God's word at that point. Like,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm coming from on that. But I digress. I love them. I love their heart. I love where it's at. I love how they have like a profound, the profound yearning for a moral traditional structure. I mean, I can't fault on that. I really like that. I do think that we live in a different day and age. We no longer live in that time. We can figure out a new way to implement that in a more modern fashion. I'm completely all for that. I just think it's funny how like they realize the government lied to them, but they want to read the government approved Bible. They don't want to stray from the government approved Bible.
Yep. Yep. It always used to. I've been a member of many different religions in the past because I was always seeking truth and didn't know I could look within. And so I've done a lot of studying, a lot of Bible reading, and it's interesting how you can go to one church and their interpretation of the Bible is one way, and you go across the street to another church and nope, nope, their God is the real God, the rest are not real God, and only their way of interpreting scripture is correct. And you could go to and on and on and on. And basically, that's how religion goes. I'm all for philosophies and ways of living, but not so much into religion. Now, I just want to say to the listeners and the viewers, if you guys got religion, it's working for you, great, great, more
Mhm.
power to you, no problem. But I'm just basing my opinions on my own experiences. And if people have done research into the Council of Nicaea and Constantine, they'd have a very different take on it. And I highly recommend Billy Carson and Paul Anthony Wallace. If you want to find out what the scriptures actually are saying, especially the Old Testament, then do some research on the Borgia popes. Oh my God, do some research into the Borgia popes. And so the modern ideology of what Jesus Christ is, what he looks like, and everything about him was modeled after one of the Borgia Pope's sons, who was a rotten son of a bitch. And they
Exactly.
modeled what Christ looks like. I mean, the whole concept of a long straight hair and blue-eyed Jesus is just fucked up, man. I mean, the Middle East and all the people who hate the people in the Middle East, those were Jesus people, man. Like
It
none
is.
of it makes any sense. But the more you learn, the more all of these false beliefs get dashed into pieces. And I personally, this is just my opinion, Stephen, but I think what the return of Christ is the return of the internal spiritual evolution of humankind, Christ consciousness, some call it Buddha consciousness, where we're not supposed to just read about Jesus, we're supposed to become like Jesus. And all these
Mm-hmm.
people who are not, like the guys in the rhinestone suits with their multi-billion-dollar cathedrals, and people are all sending in money, and because he's manipulating their emotions the right way, that is not acting like Jesus. Who did Jesus hang
Mm-mm.
out with? Sorry, I'll try to stop, but I'm on a bit of a
No,
roll.
no, I love it.
Jesus hung out with the prostitutes and the beggars and the sinners and the real people, and we're supposed to be real people, and I think we're supposed to emulate the ways of Christ. And anything short of that is just another illusion, is more bullshit, is part of
Mm-hmm.
the construct, which is what I call basically the matrix. I believe we live in a construct, but there is a real reality outside of the construct that if people keep knocking and keep persevering, they can find. Anyway, I'll shut up now. I didn't mean to
No,
go off
you're
on you. I'm
awesome.
just
I
saying
love it.
that
I
that
love it.
that these are just some of the things that piss me off and some of my opinions. So I'm
I'm
not
with
trying to
you.
shove them down anyone's throat. It's just
Yeah.
people think, open up your eyes, learn, and then that's the other thing. All the people that are doing everything their pastor says, if anything goes wrong, it must be because of them, because their pastor wouldn't be wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
there's no, I mean, it's just another gatekeeping system to keep people oppressed and keep their power suppressed. I have a friend who goes to a church. I'm not going to talk about the church, but I'll just say I found out her church has between 250 and 500 billion dollars in assets, and they still require each parishioner or person that goes to the church to pay 10% tithing of everything they make. So I
That's
asked her, I
great.
said, what exactly is your church doing with this $100 billion in assets? Why do they need that kind of money? And she says, I
Exactly.
don't know. I guess I should find out. Never occurred to her to ask. Anyway, I'm sorry, I don't mean to go bashing
No, no,
religion,
no,
but it
no.
just
You're
these
you're
are the
you're
things that piss me off.
you're all good. You're all good. No, so I completely agree with you. I do think the return of Christ is going to be in the form of a consciousness and energy, 100%. We are out of that age of Pisces. We are now into the age of Aquarius. Pisces was kind of that age of organized religion, that aspect, and now we're moving into the age of Aquarius, which is very consciousness based, the real truth, at least in my eyes, and diving within. So one thing I want to bring up to you, where you talked about we need to be like Christ, so this kind of throws a lot of fundamentalists on their butt. So in the Gnostic scriptures, there's a book called the Acts of Andrew. Now, a lot of people don't know who Andrew is. Well, it turns out Jesus had way more than 12 disciples. Okay. He had way more. And some of these disciples were capable of the same things he could do. In the Acts of Andrew, you have Andrew would go around and make the blind able to see. He could turn water into wine as well. He was healing the sick, he was casting out demons. And now we can take a look at this and realize maybe why this got taken out during the five councils and things like that, because this destroys their control structure. We can't have everybody thinking that they can do what Jesus could do. We have to have everybody thinking that Jesus was the one Son of God and only he could do what he could do, because we can't have a whole bunch of enlightened people walking around. It's bad for the control structure and it's bad for the machine. So that's basically essentially where that kind of came from. When you have there's a profoundly different story of Jesus when we look into the other texts. And then I did a whole show called Bloodlines, where I entertained the possibility that Jesus and Mary Magdalene could have very well had children.
Oh, yeah.
And if you were to kind of, even though I think the 144,000 means something else, but if you were to take that, let's say they had four kids and you divided that throughout the generations, their four kids, each of those kids had four kids and vice versa, you end up with somewhere around 144,000 individuals in that gene pool at that
Mhm.
point in time. So it does beg the question. However, the whole bloodline thing, I feel like that in itself could be a power grab. And this is what I mean. We have to have like discernment with that, is because, it leads people to believe that this bloodline is special. They deserve more than I do, or they deserve their elite prowess or things like that because of this bloodline. And,
Mm.
that's something we have to take into consideration when it comes to that. And the other thing that you were saying too about the biggest thing I think a lot of Christians go wrong in is they have two authorities in their heart when they're only supposed to be having one. The one authority is God, or if you want to say the Trinity, the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. That is supposed to be a Christian's only authority. The church is not an authority at all. Okay. And that's one thing where I think a lot of people go south, is they split their definition of authority between two things as opposed to the very one. And that's where you were saying that each church has their own different interpretation of the Bible. And that this church, and I'll kid you not, Karen, there are some Christians that argue over the Trinity. They think that if you're not doing the Trinity this exact way, you're not going to be saved, and that you've lost your salvation. And this is what I mean, how people get so hyper fixated
Yeah.
on the very minute details, these very minute logistics of what we have going on right now. And in turn, they're kind of indoctrinating themselves into spiritual warfare. And and that's kind of where I come from on it. Like, this is when I'm talking about to a Christian, I'm like, so the five councils that really dictated um biblical canon, Nicaea is what made it a control structure. Nicaea was the first. They got rid of Arianism, which was Arianism actually was very Gnostic in its approach, which was very interesting, because in Arianism they believed that Christ was created before. He was created in the beginning. He wasn't created later on and birthed to Mary, as the canonical texts state, that Christ was an energy, a consciousness that God created next to himself in the beginning. So this was Arianism. And then so what they ended up doing is they ended up casting out Arianism, because they saw it as a huge direct threat to what they were trying to achieve. And that's when Christianity evolved into the control structure and the government as it was at that time. And then what happened is we had the five councils. We had it was the two councils of Carthage, the Council of Florence, the Synod of Hippo, and there was another one in the late 1500s. I don't remember the name of that one off the exact hand, but I think that was the one that started to dictate the almost final biblical canon. And then you had King James come along, and be like, no, they're saying that the world governments are the evil that we need to be looking out for in this version of the Bible. I can't have that, especially my position being a Freemason, a demonologist, but I'm going to make a Christian Bible for everybody to read that I approve of. And so that's kind of what happened. And, so like, I think my response is like, you've understood that you've been lied to by governments, scientific institutions, the education systems. You've been lied to on all avenues. Why is a government sanctioned Bible approved by you? And that's really where like my argument comes down to it, because as we can see, like you were saying, Billy Carson, I think he's fantastic at really describing what these scriptures really meant, and kind of diving into it on that deeper level. And I think that's the people more Christians should be listening to. I mean, it's almost like it's become a form of brainwashing when you look at it. It was almost like in 2020, where people would be like, yelling at people for not wearing the face coverings, and saying you're going to kill a lot of people. I went up to one person who said that to me, and I said, "So here's my question." I said, "Yes, I can totally empathize with you on how you feel, but what about all of the people who are now rendered homeless because of this? What about all of the children that are on the streets because their parents lost their livelihood, and now you have children starving on the streets? What about them?" And it's almost like, you remember when you would try to boot up your computer and it would say syntax error, you need to restart? That's exactly what went across this individual's eyes. It was like, does not compute, and then he just completely started regurgitating what he was saying again. I
Yeah.
noticed this happens with a lot of modern Christians as well. It's almost as if you try to, it's not that you're trying to forcefully, you're like, hey, have you checked out the Geneva text? Does not compute. Have you checked out an interlinear text? It does not compute. This is not the one my pastor tells me to read. But then there they go again, giving the church authority when they
Mm-hmm.
should be giving the authority to the Trinity or God or whichever sect they are a part of.
I agree. I agree. Wow, this has been such an amazing conversation. I got to have you back, man. We got to talk more
Thank you.
about this. But we're quickly running out of time. So,
Mhm.
what I was wondering if you could do is tell people where they can find you, talk about what you've got in the works, and any final messages that you want to give to the audience. Please, I want to give you time to share and to fully express anything that you would like more time.
Thank you, Karen. So, guys, you can find me on the Forbidden Knowledge Network, www.forbiddenknowledge.news, where you can find Karen over here, Chris Matthew, Ryder, Lee, Corey Hughes, Joe and Jen from Legit Bat. Charlie Robinson on Day Zero. I mean, like, it's a great network, so you can always find me there. And do check out both of the documentaries for me. That is something I would really like everybody to do if you do head over to Forbidden Knowledge News. Help Chris out and help Ryder out. They made a couple of really great documentaries. I loved the hell out of both of them, and I think they're definitely worth the wash, and they're just as much as a cup of coffee, not too big. You can also find me on Rumble and YouTube under BGcast. You can find me on every major podcast platform, including Buzzsprouts, which I kind of uploaded a couple myself to there. And you can find me on all social media. I'm not really on Facebook and Instagram as much as I used to be, but you can find me there under BGcast. It's because they constantly hide my stuff. And on X, formerly known as Twitter, they don't hide my stuff. So I'm mostly there. If you guys want to reach out and drop a line, what I have in the works tonight at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, I'm going to be going over A Tale of Two Creations. We're going to be talking about the Gnostic version of the Genesis story and kind of comparing both the canonical version and the Gnostic version side by side. And we're going to kind of go over what I talked about a little bit earlier. Are Jesus and Lucifer two sides of the same coin? I have a lot of different shows in the works coming up throughout here in 2024. As far as I know, I will have a part in the part two of the Forbidden Knowledge documentary, Doors of Perception. So you can check me out on there. And I am kind of working towards a few things right now, Karen. I'm working towards doing my own documentary, potentially starting off in 2025. I've got an ebook I'm currently working on called the BG Method. It's going to be a way to get yourself into alignment and total, not just physical, but mental, emotional, and spiritual health. Kind of a way that I kind of live my life, and the things that I do. And of course, you don't have to do everything that I do. You can put your own spin on it. That's what it's there for. This is my own guideline that I'm handing out to everybody, basically. And yes, you don't have to follow it to a T. You can do what you want. And the one message I would leave to everybody, and this is something that I leave a lot, but I truly mean it, is, guys, you are the hero of your own story. Okay, we all are, and we all have the capability and the potential of being the heroes of our own story. Stop giving away your power. Stop looking to external saviors. Stop thinking that we're going to be saved by somebody or something. You have to do the saving yourself. Okay, and that is why we have the intellect and the awareness, and we've been gifted with this wealth of remembrance that we're all experiencing right now, is because each and every one of us has what it takes to do this. And guys, the best thing I could say is be the most spiritually sovereign individual that you can possibly can be. All right, always treat everybody with love and compassion. Be that love you never received in the world. Be that understanding you never received in the world. Be that compassion. Be the family member, the friend that you never received in the world, because it doesn't go unnoticed. And it is what's ultimately going to catalyze the true change for each and every one of us. And Karen, thank you for having me on tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolute my pleasure. It's been a great conversation. The time just went by Zoom so fast. Can't wait to talk to you again. I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank the viewers and the listeners. I really appreciate you all so very much. And for those of you who are able, please stop by my YouTube channel, and I'm now going to be streaming to Rumble on Sundays at noon Mountain Time. And it's an open discussion. So it's a Q&A, it's a community participation. And this week's topic, the podcast is called Aliens and Angels. And this week's topic is, are aliens working with humans here on Earth? And I'd love it if you could stop by, everybody, and just join the live chat and put in your 2 cents and join the discussion. Would be awesome. So with that, I guess we're done for today. Again, thank you, Stephen. Really enjoyed the conversation. Everybody do check out Stephen and BGcast, wherever you can find them, which is just about everywhere. And I wish everybody a super good week. And I'm going to say bye-bye for now. And we'll see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show.
Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.